Hello, second grade musicians, and welcome to our second work on genres. Just to review, that genre is a type of music. Last week we worked really hard on jazz, and you guys sent me some beautiful, beautiful artwork of your listening exercise. Okay, again, you were just kind of drawing as the moment kind of moved you while we were listening to jazz. Well, today's activity is a little bit different. We are going to be doing a different genre as well. Like I explained to you just now, it is a type of music. And I just want to give you guys a heads up that next week, you guys are going to be taking a test or an assessment on everything you guys learned this year. So if there's anything you want to review, you can always go back on any of the videos to kind of recap, but most of it is going to be on instruments, that was our really big focus. I didn't ask you many questions about jazz or anything, or what we're going to be working on today, with the exception of what a genre is. So I do want you guys to know that a genre means a type of music, okay? So definitely make sure that you go back and watch and try to remember everything that we have kind of done this year up to this point, especially since grades are going to be due soon. So I want to make sure that I have some sort of thing to kind of give you to see what you guys learned this year. So I can see what you guys remembered, what you guys liked, and so on. So for today, we're going to be doing one of my personal favorite genres, rock and roll. Now, when people think of rock and roll, a lot of people often think of, yeah, it's like this really big, like loud music. But that's not where really rock and roll came from or how it started. Rock and roll developed actually in the 1950s from a kind of music called rhythm and blues, which was performed by black singers and musicians. At first, this type of music was popular only with African Americans, very similar to how jazz started as well, but that was back in the 20s. In the later 1950s and 1960s, rock and roll became very popular across our country, the United States, and across the Atlantic Ocean all the way in Europe. And we're going to learn about one very famous American rock and roll artist today, and one very famous European group. So I kind of wanted to get a little bit of both places that rock and roll really had a very big impact. So let's talk a little bit about the instruments that you might hear in rock and roll, right? So I'll circle them as we talk about them, kind of like I did for jazz, okay? First off, we have a piano. But in the 1950s and the 1960s, they started becoming a little bit more popular, and these are called the keyboard. And if you remember from my classroom, I have a keyboard. That's what I use in my classroom. I use a piano in the auditorium and a keyboard in my classroom. What makes a keyboard special is that I need electricity in order to be able to play it. With that, I can make my keyboard have different sounds, almost like a synthesizer. Like it kind of has this kind of punk rocky kind of feel to it. I can make my keyboard sound like a trumpet. I can make my keyboard sound like a guitar. I can give my keyboard sound effects to do. I can't do that with a piano. A piano just sounds like a piano. So a keyboard was kind of becoming a little bit more popular with the growth of rock and roll. Then we have over here another instrument we talked about last week, the saxophone, right? Belonging in the woodwind family, uses a reed, nice and straight, has all the keys down. We have lots of different kinds of guitars, but especially the electric and the bass guitar over here. So I'm going to kind of circle those. We have lots of different shapes and colors and sizes over here, but really the electric guitar, again, and bass guitar need electricity in order to play, unlike this guitar over here. This is called an acoustic guitar. It means just like the piano in the auditorium, I don't need to plug it in, and it sounds like a guitar. I play it and it sounds what it's supposed to sound like. I don't need any extra power going to it in order for it to work. I can't really play an electric guitar without electricity. After all, think about the word, right? Electricity, right? So electric guitars were really becoming popular as well. In the middle over here, we have a turntable or a record player. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, very important one, right? Over here, our drum kit, right? Or a drum set. Definitely drums are very, very important as well. And again, these are not the only instruments important in rock and roll. There are plenty, but these are really the main ones that people will think about immediately when we start talking about this genre. So we're going to talk about a couple of people, like I said today. We're going to be talking about the Beatles. These are these guys over here, and I'm going to write their word over here. These are the Beatles, not like the bug. If I was spelling the bug, I would use two B's. And over here, I'm not talking about bugs. I'm talking about this musical group. So it's got an A in it, which makes the spelling a little bit differently than the bug. It was a group of four, basically teenagers, and they were one of the first real like boy bands to take over the world. They were so popular. I was going to say the nation, but honestly, once they came to America, they were just as popular here as they were in England. And even though 2 out of the 4 of them are not even alive anymore, they are still extremely popular, and people are always buying their music and listening to them. So they are called the Beatles. Now we have this cool looking dude in the middle, right? This is the one from America. Oh, I'm sorry. So the Beatles were from England. This guy over here, this is Elvis, or Elvis Presley. And Elvis Presley was the American rock and roll star. Like what he did, he was more famous than you could probably even imagine. Okay, people from all over the world would tune into their concerts because you could go to a concert, but most of them would be televised. That means on the TV, and you would watch them, and like millions of people would tune in just to watch these guys perform, and it was really an amazing thing. I also have kind of like this poster over here that I thought was kind of cool. It just mentioned a lot of other rock and roll bands. For your parents, if you're looking at this, you'll notice that some of them you're like, what? I wouldn't really consider them rock and roll. There's a couple of heavy metal. There's a couple of even a little bit more. I saw a couple of heavy metal ones here, a couple of more jazz type bands, but really we're talking about like just the type of music that they played. So even if they played a couple of songs that even were remotely close to this genre, they were rock and roll bands, right? So what I'd like you to do, I'm attaching this story as well to my lesson, so it's probably on the bottom of this video. It's the story of rock and roll, and you'll notice it kind of almost looks like a little baby book. It even says on the bottom, it says perfect for baby rockers, but it's kind of cool because it gives you guys a very simple look at how many rock and roll artists there are, and hey, maybe even some of them you recognize. Again, it's one of my favorite types. My favorite type happens to be Aerosmith, but I also really like Billy Joel, Elton John. So there's a ton of this guy over here is David Bowie, all right, and Tina Turner, and you guys will take a look at the book and see how many artists maybe you even recognize, and if you don't recognize, there's a very good chance that your parents or even your grandparents might. All right, so we're going to listen to 2 songs today. They are attached on my website. So if you keep scrolling down underneath this video, I put both of these songs and their music videos there. It's because of copyright issues, a lot of times YouTube will be like, you're not supposed to put those videos there, Mrs. Broski. So I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube, and there's no point because you are more than capable of just scrolling down and clicking on those links. So I'm not actually going to listen to them with you guys today. I want you to do that on your own, okay? So as you listen to both of them, and definitely need all of them, I put the lyrics here as well. Okay, so these are the lyrics for All You Need Is Love. So while you're listening to it, you can either watch the video, you can look up your own lyrics, or you can come back and you can pause this video on the lyrics so you can actually see them while you're looking at them. Same thing with my next song, Jailhouse Rock. Here is all of the words, and it definitely helps. I feel like for me, sometimes I can't understand what they're talking about, especially if I'm just listening to the song one time. But it definitely helps if you kind of read along as you go. So you might even want to listen to each song 2 times, one time watching the video and the other time just kind of reading the lyrics, so you know what to do. For your assignment for this week is you're going to choose just one of these songs, but please listen to both because they really are fantastic. And the whole point of this is to kind of expose you to as much different music from all over as I possibly can, okay? So you're going to listen to both of these songs, but you're only going to choose one of them to write about. If you really want to do 2, absolutely, I would love it, but you don't have to. You can just choose one of them. For each song, I put 3 questions. You can either write them on paper and send a picture of it, or you could just type it out as an email and send it to me. Either way, send it to abroski@schools.nyc.gov by June 8th. For the Beatles song, it says basically what did the Beatles say mean more than anything, what instruments are being played in the song, and how many Beatles are there in the group. And for Jailhouse Rock is where does the song take place, what's the name of the dance everyone does, and what instruments are mentioned in this song. So they're pretty simple questions, but I still want you to watch the video, so please try to do that as best as you can. And before I end it for this week, I do want to remind you guys that there is an assessment next week, okay? That is going to be our test. So next week, there's not going to be an official lesson. The lesson is going to be the test. So just be prepared for it, and if you have any questions, of course, you can email me at any time, or you can go back and look at some of the previous videos. All right, guys, have a fantastic week. See you next time. Bye.